Bob Lazar claims our government captured alien spaceships. Lazar has been questioned and criticized. He even had to take a lie detector test, and that's when some people started believing him.
Strange lights over Las Vegas. Strange things like this have been appearing over the Nevada desert for years. The answer to the mystery may lie in the sprawling Nevada nuclear test site in a place called Area 51. Area 51 is known by other names: Groom Lake, Dreamland, the Skunk Works. It's an isolated military facility where the U.S. develops its most top-secret projects. The U-2 spy plane was developed here. So was its replacement, the high-flying Blackbird. But there are some who believe these formerly secret projects are nothing compared to what's currently under wraps. No one who has actually worked on the test site has ever talked about what goes on there. No one, that is, until now.
They are actively and have in their possession alien spacecraft, and they are actively undergoing analysis.
He drew these sketches of one of 9 different saucers he says the government has in a secret warehouse. He willingly agreed to take a lie detector test. Terry Tavernetti is the ex-cop who administered the test.
He gave absolutely no physiological indications of attempting deception.
In the mid-1960s, Ralph Friedman, known by friends as Jim, was working at Area 51 for a defense contractor called EG&G. Friedman was responsible for securing overnight shipments of equipment, as well as managing all manner of security and transportation. At that time, UFOs were a pretty big thing. Indeed, they were. Not since the late 1940s had public interest in UFOs been so intense.
This is a UFO, unidentified flying object.
And a sharp increase in sightings had been reported, especially in the American Southwest. One day, while Friedman was driving with his supervisor through Area 51, he decided to bring up the subject. He told his boss, "I heard through the rumor mill that one of the UFOs had gone to a remote area of the test site. I heard it was in Area 22. Things got awkward. His boss didn't say a word and kept his eyes forward on the road. Then he said, "Jim, I don't want to hear you mention anything like that ever again if you want to keep your job." To say that Area 51 is an enigma would be a massive understatement. Area 51 is a military training facility located within an enormous swath of land called the Nevada Test and Training Range. This military installation is roughly the size of the state of Connecticut, more than twice the size of Delaware. Within this vast expanse is an area known as the Nevada Test Site, where, during the Cold War, the U.S. would explode many hundreds of powerful nuclear weapons, above ground and also in deep underground shafts and tunnels. These tests would continue until 1992. One blast was so large and so poisonous that it left Area 51 deserted for years. The facility, as it's called, is almost entirely hidden from the general public. In 2019, a man was shot and killed for trespassing onto the property after gunning it in his car and driving more than 8 miles into the test site. The area is patrolled by armed military guards in white pickup trucks, called camo dudes.
Put your hands up. Put your f***ing hands up. I'm not going to tell you again.
The only way to get a glimpse into the base itself is hiking to the peak of Tikaboo Mountain, more than 26 miles away. The site is surrounded on all sides by high mountain ranges. Much of what is known is likely only a fraction of what has really happened at this bizarre and mysterious location. It remains one of the most secure locations on planet Earth, closely guarded and extremely classified. This secretive nature has been true of Area 51 since the beginning. The story begins actually before Area 51, with a little operation called the Manhattan Project. Until 2013, the US government had never acknowledged the existence of Area 51, meaning that it officially didn't exist until then. This type of operation, which is completely secret, is known as a black project or black operation. The Manhattan Project was the original black operation that paved the way for all future black operations. The Manhattan Project, or the construction of the nuclear bomb during World War II, was so secret that Vice President Harry Truman didn't even know about it. Not until Franklin Roosevelt died did Truman finally learn about the operation, when he became president. What makes this even crazier is the fact that as a senator, Truman led a congressional committee, later called the Truman Commission, that was tasked with keeping track of defense spending during the war. The project was led by Army Major General Leslie Groves and employed well over 100,000 people. Despite this, no more than a few dozen people knew of its true purpose. The vast majority of workers had no idea what they were working on. Many workers manned factories overlooking dials and switches. Mary Ann Buffard worked in the laundry for the Monsanto Chemical Company, who was contracted to work on the project. After washing and ironing workers' uniforms, I'd hold the uniform up to a special instrument, and if I heard a clicking noise, I'd throw it back in to be done all over again. That's all I did, all day long. Mary wouldn't learn until after the war that the special instrument was a Geiger counter, and the clicking was radiation. The headquarters of the Manhattan Project lay in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, of which the existence was secret. Dubbed the Secret City, over 75,000 people settled there, and during the height of the war, it drew more power from America's electrical grid than the entire city of New York. By the time the bomb was tested in New Mexico in July 1945, the price tag for the bomb was nearly $2 billion. Adjusted for inflation, that's over $20 billion today. Not a single member of Congress knew of the Manhattan Project until the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Manhattan Project's post-war successor was the Atomic Energy Commission, or AEC, which was established through the Atomic Energy Act. The AEC would then establish the Nevada test site as a place to blow up their many nuclear weapons. The AEC would be the first civilian government agency that maintained secrets outside of the president. In 1994, after Bill Clinton established a committee to investigate radiation experiments on human subjects, information was kept from the president because he wasn't on a need-to-know basis. Area 51 is a secret city of its own. In the Nevada Test and Training Range sits a large salt flat, or dry lake bed, called Groom Lake, the official name for Area 51, according to the CIA. The Groom Dry Lake would be chosen as the location for Project Aquatone, or the creation of the U-2 spy plane. In 1955, the CIA would set up shop along with the Lockheed Corporation, creating airplane hangars and building runways. In the beginning, it was just a few dozen Lockheed engineers, CIA spooks, and Air Force staff. The U-2 spy plane was another project, like the Manhattan Project before it, that was shrouded in secrecy, the details of which are astonishing. First of all, to get the U-2 spy planes into Area 51 in the first place, the plane was broken down, piece by piece, which were all covered in white sheets so nobody could get a look at them. They were then put into the belly of a C-124 airplane and flown to Area 51 from Lockheed's facility in Burbank, California, home of the famous Skunk Works program. The planes would be pieced together inside of airplane hangars before they were flown. According to security guard Richard Mingus, I had no clue what the airplane looked like until it flew directly over my head. In November of 1955, a C-54 military transport plane carrying Lockheed, Air Force, and CIA staff crashed into Charleston Mountain on its way to Area 51. All 14 men on board were killed instantly. Immediately, the military and CIA sprang into action. The press was stonewalled from the site by a military blockade. The CIA would then send a U-2 spy plane to locate the site of the crash. This was technically its first mission, which was also completely unplanned. The Las Vegas Review-Journal surmised that the crew was likely working on nuclear weapons, given the apparent sensitive nature of the crash. The men's occupations were, of course, extremely classified, and their identities were kept secret. Their families would not be told that their loved ones were actually working on a top-secret mission for the CIA. Although the crash happened in 1955, the families would not be told until 2002. Such is the nature of the U-2 spy program. The CIA and the military went to extreme lengths to keep it from getting out. I was sworn to secrecy for 47 years. I couldn't talk about it. That's James Allen Noche, another veteran of Area 51. Noche worked in security for the CIA and was always paid in cash or given fake Pan Am checks. When a spy plane crashed in Utah in May of 1963, a sheriff and a family on vacation were present and witnessed the crash. The pilot had ejected and survived, but the plane was a smoldering wreck. The family promptly began taking pictures at the scene. And according to Noche, we confiscated the camera, took the film out. We just said we worked for the government. Noche told them to never speak of the crash to anyone. You scared them. We told them that there would be dire consequences. On top of that, though, CIA agents arrived on the scene with a briefcase filled with cash. I think it was like 25 grand apiece. For the sheriff and the family, it was common practice. That it was. In another incident, when a Greyhound bus grazed the side of a CIA trailer on the road, the driver was given a stack of $5,000 in cash to avoid any legal or insurance inquiry. Airline pilots often reported sightings of spy planes as UFOs. The reason for this is understandable. At this time, passenger airplanes would fly at an altitude of around 10 to 20,000 feet. The U-2 spy plane flew at around 70,000 feet. And since the existence of the U-2 was a secret, flying at that altitude was otherwise thought to be impossible for a man-made aircraft. The altitudes only got higher with the advent of the U-2's successor, the A-12, also known as the Ox Cart. This particular plane flew at an altitude of 90,000 feet. It would be strange if they didn't think it was a UFO. When pilots made these reports to the FAA, the base commander at Area 51 would send FBI agents to meet the plane when it landed. They would then force the pilots, as well as all the passengers, to sign non-disclosure agreements. Despite their efforts, UFO sightings in the region were rampant. To avoid the sensitive information from being compromised, the National Security Council convened a psychological strategy board, calling gullibility and mass hysteria a national security threat. What followed was a so-called debunking effort, downplaying UFO stories in the media. The panel sought to utilize articles, TV shows, and movies, even seeking the help of the Disney Corporation to sway public opinion, and to make UFOs seem uninteresting and easily explainable.
First of all, the objects are not unidentified. We know what they are. Second, in most cases, they're not flying. And finally, in many cases, they are not even material objects.
But public interest in UFOs never died down, and they would take on an entirely new form when KLAS of Las Vegas ran a story with an anonymous man who claimed to have worked at the Nevada Test and Training Range. Robert Lazar, who maintains his story to this day, claims to have worked at a secret facility called S4 near Area 51 proper. Lazar is perhaps the most important reason why Area 51 is associated with aliens and UFOs. Lazar claims that he was hired by the contractor EG&G, where he worked to reverse engineer an alien spacecraft, one of 9 held at the facility. He also said that on one occasion, while walking with armed guards, he thought he saw what looked like a small alien in between 2 doctors with lab coats on. Lazar would subsequently reveal his identity to the world, and he maintains a cult-like following. But serious doubts arose about Lazar's story. He appears to have lied about his education, claiming he was a graduate of MIT and Caltech, despite them having no record of him attending.
There's no record of Bob Lazar ever being there. No, I'll tell you why. I can't tell you why. We're going to edit this out. Okay, and we're back.
Proponents of Bob's story claim that these are a result of efforts to smear him. The story past this point in the Area 51 history has culminated in what is probably some of the worst journalism in the history of the United States. Seriously, Area 51 appears to be where journalism goes to die. In 2011, author Annie Jacobson would publish a hugely popular book titled Area 51, An Uncensored History of America's Top Secret Military Base. The book was praised by some and is heavily cited as a source by media outlets when doing stories on Area 51. In the book, Jacobson claims that the name Area 51 comes from the fact that the remains of the Roswell crash were transported to the area in 1951. Jacobson claims that what crashed at Roswell was a flying disc with so-called hover and fly technology. This was, according to her, built by Nazi scientists working for the Soviet Union. The disc, according to her, contained the bodies of children, bred by Nazi Dr. Joseph Mengele to have large heads and large eyes. But 2 of the children survived, and they were imprisoned at S4, where they underwent cruel human experimentation. This supposedly lasted into the 1980s. The source for this story was a single anonymous engineer who worked for EG&G, and although Jacobson doesn't name him in her book, the man's identity was revealed by ABC News as Al O'Donnell. Funny enough, Jacobson actually quotes him in other parts of the book describing him as an EG&G engineer, but citing him as anonymous when describing the Roswell story in a strange attempt to conceal his identity. According to George Knapp, the reporter for KLAS, who originally broke Bob Lazar's story, he met with O'Donnell. Al O'Donnell told him a completely different story from the one he told to Jacobson.
And over the course of 2 years, I would meet with him. Remember Annie Jacobson, her book about Area 51?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same guy, but the story that he told me was different than what he told her. He said that they eventually told me that they had a live alien out there. He said this thing was alive and that they eventually were able to communicate with us. 2 or 3 years later, he totally changes his story. What had happened was there was a congressional investigator, and he worked for Senator Robert Byrd. But after that congressional inquiry, this guy completely changed his tune. So he made up this story, which is the one that you heard from Andy Jacobson. Completely ridiculous.
Which story to believe? Is O'Donnell totally batshit? I'll let you all decide that one. Whether you believe engineers at Area 51 were reverse engineering alien spacecraft, they were reverse engineering Soviet MiGs, a gift from Israel. The pilots and engineers of Area 51 and Lockheed's Skunk Works would also rapidly develop advanced stealth technology for the military, including the SR-71 Blackbird and one of the first stealth bombers, the F-117 Nighthawk, with fuselage acting as a mirror to deflect radar. Throughout the 20th century, Area 51 was the location for the testing of the most cutting-edge aerial reconnaissance technology. But it was at the dawn of the 20th century that would become the dawn of the unmanned aerial vehicle. After the September 11th attacks, the budget for Area 51 became a bottomless pit. It was like the late 1950s Cold War boom all over again. But this new cutting edge was drones. Did you know that before 9/11, the US government plotted to take out Osama bin Laden with a drone strike in Afghanistan? In the winter of 2000, the CIA and the Air Force worked together to turn their arsenal of reconnaissance or spy drones into remote-controlled killing machines. These drones were test-flown at where else but Area 51, as they probably still are to this day. The aim was to take the Predator drone and slap on some anti-tank Hellfire missiles for targeted assassinations. The name of the drone itself would change, from RQ-1, R for reconnaissance, to MQ-1, M for multi-role, meaning spying and killing. Predator's successor, known as the Reaper drone, would prove to be even deadlier, carrying not only missiles, but also laser-guided bombs. While Predator could carry 200 pounds of bombs, Reaper could carry 1.5 tons of them. The government wanted to kill bin Laden following the bombings of the US embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. The Air Force and the CIA would engineer a full-scale mock-up of Osama bin Laden's residence in Afghanistan, at Area 51. But CIA Director George Tenet called off the strike. After 9/11, and the subsequent War on Terror, the drone program ballooned into a widespread killing campaign that extends to the ends of the Earth, killing tens of thousands of people since. So, is Area 51 just the testing ground for futuristic spy technology? Or is there also alien technology there? I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys. And always an extra special thank you to my patrons. Got another video coming real soon, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Thanks everyone, and take care.
Bob Lazar claims our government captured alien spaceships.